pursuing hard things, doing hard things, like that's how you build character. That's how you grow. That's how you get strong.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Making a Man. Today, we have Mr. Mike Erwin with us, and we're really excited.
Yeah.
You know, Dad, I love having veterans on this show. It's so much
absolutely. Fun. It's an exciting day. And Axel actually, Mike got out of school early, so he's even more pumped.
Right.
I was like, you're going to learn more from Mike than you are in the last hour of school. So come on over and let's interview Mike today. So thanks for being with us, Mike. We really appreciate it. I want to introduce you real quick. You are the founder and executive director of Team Red, White, and Blue. It's a charitable organization that leads with kind of health and wellness, building a community for veterans. The website is teamrwb.org. I got the chance to meet Mike at one of their events, their charitable events, and they do incredible work for veterans and something that we always support. He is the author of Leadership is a Relationship, which is a great book I would recommend everyone listen and read. He's also the CEO of the Character and Leadership Center. It's a dynamic business consulting company that focuses on positive psychology and how to lead yourself. Mike was a major in the U.S. Army after attending West Point, where he also played on the baseball team, which is really cool. And Mike also received a master's degree from the University of Michigan, where he actually studied under Dr. Chris Peterson, who's one of the founders of positive psychology. Mike, that is a lot to accomplish in a lifetime. We're glad that you're here. If you could maybe go back to when you were Axel's age in your early young teen formidable years, if you could take us through that journey, maybe what led you to where you're at today, that would be a helpful start.
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, great to be here. Yeah, love the conversations. Especially love what you guys are doing here with this podcast. So for me, I grew up in Syracuse, New York. So from upstate, so not the city, but further upstate. And, for me, a lot of it was trying to find a path, where I could serve to make a difference. And there's a lot of ways that you can serve. My dad was a cop, he was a police officer. And my grandfather was a cop. My other grandfather was a firefighter, right? So there's a lot of like service mentality in my family. But at the time, honestly, when I was Axel's age, I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a doctor, and I played baseball, and I was trying to go to Johns Hopkins or Georgetown and trying to go into pre-med and then become a doctor. But, it's as you know, so much happens between age 13 and age 18, that journey when you're making a decision about what to do, with that next step of your life and that step into adulthood. And for me, I did volunteer a lot at the local hospital. I got to shadow one of my friends. His dad was a doctor. And I thought it was good. I mean, I could have seen myself doing it, but honestly, I didn't feel like, wow, like this is what I have to do. And so that left me open. That opened it to different things, and snuck in through that door, that little crack, snuck in the idea of going into the military. And so, one day my mom, when I was in the middle of my sophomore year of high school, said, "Hey, have you ever heard of West Point?" And I was like, yeah, I remember, didn't like cousin Mark go there back in like 1987 or 88? So one of my oldest cousins in my family. Yeah. And she said, yeah, that's exactly right. And so she's like, well, have you ever thought about it? And I was like, yeah, not really. I mean, just a little bit. And so we ended up going down a few weeks later for a visit, and I went there, and it totally was like, wow, I've got to give this a chance, because I knew it was hard. I knew it would be, a big challenge, but I knew that if I didn't give it a chance, I would probably always wonder what if. So that really kind of put me on a different trajectory, starting at the age of 16, where I had thought my whole life, all the way through up to age 16, doctor, that's what I want to be. And then, nope, you're going into the military, So I think my message that I learned from that, my big takeaway, is being open to changing your mind, because it's very easy to get vapor locked on like what we think, hey, I need to go to this school, or, go into this profession, or go into the military, or whatever it might be. And maybe that's the answer, but I think being open, to, things that maybe you didn't even consider sometimes is the way it goes.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. We talk a lot about that sometimes, like, even when you are focused on something, sometimes serendipity happens where a door opens that you never would have considered. And you look back and you're like, if I wouldn't have, that door cracked open, but if I wouldn't have kind of kicked it open and been curious about it and looked what was behind it,
Right.
I would never be where I'm at today. So I like that message, Mike, a lot of being open to other possibilities. You have a question, Axe?
Yes, sir, I do. So what would you say is the best advice that you've personally ever received?
Ooh. So I'd start out by saying I'm really fortunate that I've had a lot of people, coaches, teachers, parents, siblings, a lot of people in my life who have been good guides, mentors, people who have offered, good advice. I think one thing that sticks out from my dad from a long time ago, is that anything worth doing is going to be hard, right? And so if you ever find yourself doing something and it's like, oh, this is easy, it's probably not very worthwhile. So that one stands out. Because anytime I'd be like, oh, this is hard. Well, that's good. That means you're doing something that is meaningful and is worthwhile. So
yeah.
So I think that's one. And then the other one for me, is really from my academic advisor at the University of Michigan, Dr. Chris Peterson. And, his advice was to remember that other people matter. And that as you go through life, what the research really clearly shows is that investing in your relationships with family, friends, teammates, coworkers, classmates, roommates, neighbors, all the people that you do life with, when you invest in those relationships, it's the best investment in your happiness and in your well-being that you can make. And that was something that I maybe kind of knew or I thought might be true. But when I got to grad school at the age of 29 and I studied it and I got to hear that directly from Chris, it was like this aha moment of like, wow, like I need to make that a bigger priority in my life, but I also need to make sure that other people know this message because, I think a lot of people think that, again, success or the newest car or the biggest house or, the biggest achievements in the world are going to fulfill you. And I don't know if you guys have seen Scotty Scheffler, but just before the British Open, when he was talking about like, hey, like, I don't know, why is it that like the thrill of winning a tournament lasts for like 2 minutes and that why is it that golf doesn't fulfill me? Well, that's why. I mean, like almost any pro athlete will tell you that the fulfillment that comes from being the very best in the world at what you do is great. It's awesome. It certainly makes you a lot of money, but ultimately it's not fulfilling. The fulfilling things are really, your faith, your relationships, and that research about relationships was a really powerful insight that Chris shared with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I think of Mike's background and his success. Everything that he has done has really, and most people, if you look back at success, it is about kind of the relationships in the community that you've built with other veterans or with business leaders when you're helping them think through stuff. Those relationships create who you are today.
Totally.
Actually, right?
100%.
Mike, in our house, and Axel and I, we talk a lot about kind of, sometimes it's hokey, but we talk about positive affirmations. Just last night, I was like, you never say that. You always self-talk to yourself in a better way. We talk about positive mental attitude, but with your background in your studies, are there some unique or unconventional techniques to help build kind of this positive muscle in your mind that you could share with us?
So when you think about, and I only know enough of neuropsychology to be dangerous, I'm not an expert, but I know that, the average brain, give or take, adult brain has about 80 billion neurons in it. Right. When you think about like what a huge number that is in this small space in between your ears, it's like just unbelievable. And so really what we're talking about when we talk about self-talk is how are those neurons firing and what signals are they sending, essentially within your brain to itself. So it gets really complicated really fast. And even like the people who make their entire lives about studying the brain and neurological pathways still only barely understand this. But I am a huge believer in the power of self-talk and listening to and knowing when that voice in your mind goes negative. So it could be everything from I'm afraid of something or the moment's really big, in baseball. And it's like, are you choking the ball or are you nice and loose and being relaxed? How are you talking to yourself before the big talk, or before, that big moment? And I do think that it is a learnable skill. A few people perhaps are naturally gifted at it. Most people are not. I think most people, our self-talk tends to be negative or critical or worrisome. And so, yeah, the idea of working on and trying to develop a positive affirmation and a positive approach to self-talk, I think is super important. Don't have tons of necessarily deep-seated, like secret sauce wisdom,
No, that's
but
good.
I do think there is power in reading the quotes, the kind of things that you want like your mind to be thinking about and focusing on a consistent basis. So I just gave a talk this morning at NC State. The commissioner of the ACC was there, and a whole bunch of different coaches from NC State were there, and we talked about that. Like, hey, everything I'm going to share with you in the next 20 minutes, you've heard this before, but there's this quote out there that basically says something along the lines of motivation doesn't last. Like showering or bathing, it's recommended daily, and it's just that idea. I think it's like Calvin and Hobbes or something like that, but it's just this idea that you need to refresh, you need to hear it again, you need to see it again, you need to process it again. And that's the power of that consistent, self-talk and the affirmations, is that you do it repetitively, and that's when it becomes, more entrenched in your mind.
That's really good.
Were you like nervous when you spoke in front of all those college students?
Oh yeah. So this was, and I speak to lots of different audiences. I spoke actually, not too far from you guys I spoke to 3,300 teachers and principals from Cabarrus County about 2 weeks ago in like the big, huge auditorium. It was huge, and that was nerve-wracking. That was one of those moments. But today, obviously having the commissioner of the ACC there and the athletic director and all the coaches and a lot of folks, 300 people in the room at Carter Finley Stadium up in Raleigh. You feel the pressure of that. And that's a good thing, right? That means you're alive. That means you care and that you want to go out there and do your best. But yeah, it is important to remind yourself in those moments when you start to feel, maybe anxiety, or you start to feel a little doubt creep in, of like, no, that reminder of that positive self-talk of like, hey, I'm here like for a reason, and I'm going to bring the fire, and like, I'm ready for this moment. And it does, it works.
And those people in that room want to see you succeed. I think that's important to keep telling yourself, like, nobody in here wants to see me flop or fail. They're supportive of this. And I also read this a long time ago. It's like someone said in a quote or something that if you talked to people like you talk to yourself in your head, you'd probably have no friends, because all of us speak so negatively sometimes to ourselves, and it's important to build that muscle to stop it and say, why am I saying this to myself? Here's what I should be saying.
That's a great point.
All right. So what did you love the most about going to West Point?
The people, it was hard. There's a saying about West Point. It's a great place to be from, not a great place to be at. Because when you're there, you're working really hard. You're not getting enough sleep. There's always stress and prep, things like boxing class and gymnastics class and survival swimming class and wrestling class. So just on the physical front, they make you do these physical things that most people don't want to do, right? They make you got to clean your room. You have to wake up early. You have to take all these classes, including a lot of them that maybe you don't like. So there's a lot of things that you have to do while you're there. And it's not necessarily like a lot of fun. But that being said, it's the people, the caliber of people who, voluntarily raise their hand and say, hey, I want to be a part of this culture that's hard and that's going to challenge me and that's going to push me. That's a special breed of people that want to do things that are hard. And that's the case for not just West Point, but really for a lot of things out there. But when people voluntarily choose to do something and say, I'm all in to do something that is difficult and challenging, and I'm not going to run away from that, generally those are my kind of people. Those are the kind of people that you want to be around, because they help you raise the bar on yourself. Yeah. And so the people there, were just phenomenal in terms of their love of the country, in terms of their commitment to, being the very best that they could be. And they're also most of them are selfless people, right? They come there to serve something bigger than themselves. And so if I'm not good at math, or I'm not good at, physics, there's a lot of those kinds of people who are like, hey, I got you, man. I got your back.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to help you out. And so being part of that culture where you're pushing for individual excellence, but before that, the saying is cooperate and graduate. And it's like, hey, like, everyone here can graduate and succeed when we get along and we work together and we support each other, because everybody's going to have strengths. Everybody's going to have weaknesses. And when we help each other out in the areas where we're weak, then we're all going to be better for it.
And how great is it at the end of that to, whenever you do something hard and accomplish it, especially with a group of people, it's so much more gratifying than not doing something hard and being successful at it. It's just a great feeling.
Yeah.
Right?
I'll read you a quote on that too that I actually talked about just this morning. Strength and struggle go together. The supreme reward of struggle is strength. Life is a battle, and the greatest joy is to overcome. The pursuit of easy things makes men weak. Do not hope to escape the responsibility and work. It cannot be done. It is following the path of least resistance that makes men and rivers crooked. Right? So like just this idea of like pursuing hard things, doing hard things, like that's how you build character. That's how you grow. That's how you get strong, you know?
That was like poetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was great. Hey, when I was reading kind of the intro and your accomplishments, and whenever I hear someone being introduced, my mind always goes to a place where what did they have to go through to be introduced like that? Like, it's very difficult. Like, everyone always wants to highlight all the successes. Were there any setbacks that you had along the way that really defined you, that helped you get to where you are?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Number one, too many to count. Right. And, you know, like, and anyone who's ever built, you know, a business, built a nonprofit, built an organization, raised a family, any of it, like, you know, that there's a lot of struggles. And again, that struggle is the foundation for strength. And so for me, you know, I mean, I think certainly in my time in the Army, you know, on my deployment in 2009, I really failed to make a couple of our special forces teams fully aware of how strong the enemy was in certain places. And it cost a couple of Green Berets their lives, right? Like, that was probably the most painful mistake, you know, that I made as an intelligence officer in the Army. And then, you know, within like Team Red, White, and Blue, I mean, like, there's just a lot that you go through, you know, where, you know, you just miss it. You miss, like, looking back on, which is so clear, which is for us, we were initially focused on helping service members like soldiers, airmen, Marines, to transition from service to civilian life. And there became a point in time in probably about 2018, 2019, where that really was no longer a compelling mission because the large scale deployments had slowed down, you know, and so we just missed it. We kept on delivering on that mission. And it's like, yeah, but like, there's not as big of a need for it right now. And so for a couple of years, we were kind of treading water doing that mission that there was not nearly the demand for, you know, and so like it took us a while, but we eventually made the decision to realize, okay, hey, we need to focus on veteran health and wellness, mental health, physical health, emotional health. And so sometimes it's almost like, you know, errors of omission, like what did you miss? And so that was one of the big ones at Team Red, White, and Blue. And then just all along the way, you're making decisions around people that, you know, you want to be on your team, that you want on your bus. And sometimes those people are amazing and they work out. And sometimes you bring people onto your team or onto the bus and it turns out to be a disaster, you know, for whatever reason. And so there's been plenty of those decisions over the past 15 years of bringing some of the wrong people onto the team or onto the bus and realizing, boy, that was a big mistake, you know, and I'm lucky that this person didn't really do more damage to the organization because they are not nearly as committed enough to this job, to this organization, to the people in it, right? And so lots of the bad decisions, I think, or the mistakes that I've made over the years have been around people, you know, and I think most leaders would tell you the same thing, that their best decisions have been around people and their worst decisions have been around people.
That's really good. I want to pivot. We got a couple more questions, but I wanted to pivot to Team Red, White, and Blue. We've done some charitable stuff in the past, but when I went to your event, it was like one inspiring story after the next. Like this community of people that I feel like they've come together and it has helped them cope with whatever, like through fitness and through these challenges, and this community was incredible to see. But these individual stories, I called my wife actually after that event and I'm like, you know, I heard this great story and then I met another guy and his story was unbelievable. Like, is there anything that you would highlight that there's so many of them? Is there one particular that stands out that you could share with us of how you've helped someone overcome something in that community?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it, part of it, you know, the power of, you know, of what we do is the proverbial, you know, rather than give a man fish, teach him how to fish, you know, so a lot of what we do for a lot of veterans is remind them of their power, remind them of their ability to have agency to solve some of their own problems, right? So that's a big part of what we do is, reminding them that, hey, tapping into the power of physical activity like you used to do when you were in the Army, when you were in the Marine Corps, is something that you have you have access to that at your house. It's a pair of shoes away from going outside for a walk or a hike or a run or go to the gym. But yeah, you heard some powerful stories there about, Zach Palega and Johnny Glenn. For me, we got a guy named Brandon Smith. He's up outside Asheville, probably a couple hours away from Charlotte. And he's a powerful example. He was in the Air Force, I believe, for 10 years. And, he just had this, he had some debilitating back pain. And so we often will see happens to a lot of service members is if they've got a lot of pain, it could be chronic, it could be acute, but they have it due to military operations. It could have been too many jumps out of an airplane. It could have been from combat. It could have been from a vehicle accident or rollover. And what they often do is they often end up getting prescribed painkillers, right? Like a lot of professional athletes will do, right? Sure. And because you need to numb the pain so you can be at your very best. And Brandon, in that example, became, kind of hooked on these painkillers, and it just numbed his emotions, and it, made him feel helpless at times. And getting involved in Team Red, White, and Blue, it started very slowly, like with a walk, just getting moving. But his testimony, and he did it in this video with USAA over Veterans Day last year, and he just talks about how crawl, walk, run, right? Hey, he just started crawling, just started walking barely little bit by little bit, and then started doing more. And then he started to jog one day, and then he started to jog a little bit more. And, and so, yes, he's lost a lot of weight. Yes, he's in better shape physically. The pain isn't as bad as it used to be, but more importantly, the mental side of it, right? He feels like he's a part of a team. He feels that, hey, I can, be a valuable member, to society, despite the setbacks of the pain and the injuries that I sustained from my time in the service. And, there's just hundreds of examples like him over the past 15 years of veterans who were in a bad place. And, we help them to get to a healthier, better place.
Well, I think it's amazing the community that you've built and continue to build. So, Alex, you want to end with your last one?
Yeah. Well, I have one more question before this one. So, is that the logo for Red, White, and Blue?
It is. Yep. Yeah. That's the eagle.
Nice.
Cool,
yeah. So, what advice would you give to young people on how to be great leaders?
So a couple of things I'd say. First and foremost, I would say, and this is especially for, people who are younger listening right now, because I've got a 15-year-old son, a 13-year-old daughter. I've got, 11-year-old and a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old. So I think about this myself as a parent, but also as someone. I started, a private independent Catholic high school, along with some of my friends 7 years ago. And so I teach the juniors. So they're generally 16 or 17 years old. So I'm thinking a lot about the future for basically those between the ages of 5 and 18. And as you look at artificial intelligence and all the technology that's being developed right now, there's a lot of uncertainty in the future about, what jobs are going to be there. And so my first comment about leadership is that it is arguably the smartest thing that you can study as a teenager for the future, because AI can do a lot of things in right now already or in the future, from accounting and marketing and coding and, human resources. There's a lot of things that AI can do, but, it cannot lead people. It cannot have the emotional intelligence to sense that someone's a little afraid or someone's really amped up or someone, had a bad day. And even if it could determine those things by reading your body language or reading your face, your facial expressions, it's a robot, and a robot doesn't have a heart, doesn't have a soul, and so a robot is, always going to have severe limitations compared to humans, in that world. So that's number one. Point number one is studying and thinking about and growing in leadership is a very smart thing to do right now from my view. In terms of the best things to do, I would honestly say, that getting reps on interacting with people in person and having conversation and public speaking, one of the lowest threat things that I suggest to people to do is go volunteer in a nursing home. Go volunteer. It's low threat, right? No, someone in their 70s or 80s or 90s, they're not going to judge you, right? But just get rep. You're doing it right now, right? In this podcast, getting repetitions of asking questions and listening and thinking about, okay, what does that mean? But I think that there's too much, people, especially young people, but all of us really do too much consumption, right? We consume a lot. We listen, we watch videos, and we consume social media, and we watch sports, and we watch the news, and there's a lot of consume. And ultimately, like, life belongs to creators, and so getting a good balance, like, where, you still consume, but know when you've hit your consumption level. It's like food, right? If you just keep eating it, you're going to get really unhealthy, and overweight. You got to be able to say, nope, I hit my limit. I said I'm going to have one cookie for dessert, or I'm going to have, 3 pieces of pizza, not 5, right? And so we've got to know our consumption limit, and I think that, again, going out and creating, talking, speaking, interacting with people, that's creating interaction and creating human dynamics. And I would recommend that's probably the most important thing you can do to better understand other people and giving yourself those reps that you're going to need as a leader as you grow up.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's really good advice. Mike, we're going to let you go. We so appreciate you taking time for us and
thank you so much,
and sharing some of your wisdom with us. We really appreciate it.
Hey, absolutely. Well, like I said, I'll land the plane by saying I think this is awesome what you guys are doing. Number 2 is, like I said, like this idea of creating a podcast like this.
Yeah.
This is the stuff, right? And the more you can share wisdom with people and help them to understand that, like you're doing, like that's powerful. I'm actually thinking about launching a podcast myself in 2026. I've been dabbling with it for 2 or 3 years, and I get like to the start line, and I'm like, I'm not sure I'm quite ready yet, but it's exciting to see it and give me some inspiration that maybe I need to kind of just pull the trigger and just get off the fence and jump into the game, because again, creating is really where it's at.
Yeah, it has been great. So, again, thanks for your time. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, guys.
Today. It was a good one. Let's get it. There you go. That was a pretty good one. You want to hit pause, and if you just leave it open for a second, we'll
absolutely.
Axel shut it off. But hey, this has meant so much to us.
Absolutely.